Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about Earth alchemy. This topic brings to mind episode number 78, Invisible Worlds. And in that episode, we spoke about how there are things around us every day that overlay our physical world that we do not acknowledge or take for granted. Or if we do acknowledge them, it's only when there's an extreme moment that brings these things to our attention. The entire world around us is overlaid with an etheric world or a spiritual world around it. But see, not just a spiritual world. In between the spiritual world and the physical world, there's an energy world. And this energy world has currents and waves and clusters of energy that moves. And some of these types of energies move in the form of vortexes. They spin.
Like currents. And water and stuff like that.
And so the physical representation of these things, of these energy movements that appear on the surface of the physical world, are the way hair grows on top of your head. Negroid hair grows in tiny little spirals off the scalp of Negroes. And then non-Negro people, you have one spiral that grows at the fontanelle at the top of your head near the back. Because that's where your scalp, the patterns of your hair, the weave of your hair comes together at that spiral right there. And so these energy patterns, these vortexes appear also in water, specifically in water because it's a liquid medium. So when you flush water and it goes down the toilet, it spins clockwise in the northern hemisphere. And then if you go on the other side of the equator, and you flush the toilet, water spins counterclockwise. Another way to see this is a whirlpool, or on land in the form of a tornado. Hurricanes have a vortex at the center, but when you dig deep and you start to figure out that, oh, well, I'm seeing these also out in space in the rotation of galaxies that spiral around a bigger galactic cluster. And then you look at the double helix. If you were to take a double helix and you turn it on its side, it's a vortex, right? If you were looking straight down the center of a double helix DNA, it's a vortex. It's moving it in a vortex. And all this happens inside your body on the micro level and on the macro level. Now, to me, I call this the fingerprint of God, or as some people like to call, intelligent design. But these are all representations of this energy that is right at the surface, touching the surface of the physical plane. The same way that seashells or crabs or other fish that wash up on the shore are evidence that there is life in that ocean, or there's life in that body of water or that river or that lake. You can't see the fish in the lake, but everything that washes up on the shore gives you proof that there is life under those waves. So there have been ancient cultures that have been custodians of the planet. Now, because everybody listening to this program has the handicap of being indoctrinated into the Western world education system, you see these indigenous cultures as primitive and ignorant people who don't possess the knowledge and technology that you have.
But it's just opposite. They chose to live that way. That's what nobody ever wants to recognize. When you look at the ancient world, you see all these pyramids and you see all these temples and all that stuff. They literally built that. But at some point in time, somebody had a conscious decision that this wasn't healthy or this wasn't right. And they decided to go to back to the natural world. And you see that. You know, we talked about the Dogon tribe. They know all about Orion's belt. They know all about Sirius B. They knew about all these star clusters. And that tells you that they had an ancient technology that for whatever reason they abandoned it. And, oh, yeah, they worship all the Old Testament, blah, blah, blah. But, and like I said, we've talked about the book. It's called A Serious Problem. And so when you realize that these people did this on purpose, then you come to terms with it.
So the part that is mind-blowing is when you discover that these indigenous cultures, these ancient cultures, the type of, okay, see, here's the thing. People think that when you say the word technology, that you're thinking about something or speaking about something that has been built with metal and it uses electricity, and it has artificial materials to build things and construct things to control things. You have to shake that conditioning, because you will completely miss the forest for the trees. You will completely miss the point, because these people, and we'll say Native Americans in particular, what they were doing was completely next level, but they were massacred, policed, and intimidated into not practicing these ways anymore. I'll give you an example. The Native American Ghost Dance is a dance that was used to control huge invisible tornado vortexes of energy. Now, how and what were they doing this for? The Native Americans who lived near the caldera in Yellowstone, they would place a medicine wheel on the ground. They would build a medicine wheel on the ground, and then they would do a ghost dance to act as a hand on a pressure valve to release steam or release excess energy out of the earth to prevent a catastrophe. So the elders were wise enough to see, they may have a vision quest, or they go into a peyote circle and they see something that tells them, we have to go here, we have to build this medicine wheel, and we have to ghost dance in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction to release this pressure underneath the crust so that there isn't an explosion that destroys our neighboring villages. Now, most people will hear this and think, oh man, that's some old crazy Indian shit. Well, that's why you are ignorant, because you have closed your mind off to these ancient ways, because you are thinking with the colonizer's mindset, with the boilerplate type of thinking that they've put into you that eschews anything esoteric or supernatural. But the ghost dance was so powerful, in fact, that it was outlawed. But it was used by more than one tribe. And actually what it became was a secret weapon, right? Or a secret practice that was passed from one tribe to the next. So it started with one tribe, and then they would go and they would trade with each other, and they would sit down, they would smoke, and they would talk to them like, listen, we have this thing that we do. So if you have a problem with skinwalkers and you want to clear the area of skinwalkers, this is what you do.
Skinwalkers and wendigos were two things that happened in the ancient world that were physical and spiritual beasts. The other thing, when it comes to, my wife used to work with a lady that was Native, and I was talking to her mom one time, and you guys don't understand this, but when you talk to real Native Americans, wherever they are, they were banned from using their own language. They were literally beaten when they were in grade school. They could not use their own language. On the East Coast, the Pokanoka tribe, if you were over the age of 13 and you use that language, you could be killed. What is so threatening about using your own language? That's because they had magic in their words. They were more in touch with nature. I remember we kind of briefly touched on it.
Hang on, stop. Who would see this and want to stop this?
The colonizers, of
no,
course.
No. But who amongst them would see this and want to use this or control this? The answer is the Masons. The Masons and the Knights Templar, amongst those people that came to North America in the 16, the 17, and 1800s, saw this and were like, oh, this is esoteric shit that we've been studying from the people who brought over, the Moors who brought us stuff from Egypt. We can't allow these people to do this. That is why Wounded Knee is one large Masonic prison.
Ritual.
It's a prison for Native American energy. So the ghost dance, as I said, was not isolated to one tribe, but it spread amongst many tribes. But each tribe had a variation on the ghost dance. And the ceremony spread so rapidly to so many different Indian tribes, mostly in the western states. But this interaction between Indians that were like far apart from each other, it spread the dance, and it scared these European Americans. And so it became a concern for the United States Army. While many of these European Americans were alarmed by the ghost dance and saw it as a militant and warlike movement, it was quite the opposite. It was an emergence of a peaceful resistance movement based on Indian beliefs. It was also a movement of desperation, as existing treaties had been violated and Indians in the West were forced onto reservations. The Plains Indians This was a period of starvation as the buffalo were slaughtered, destroying their way of life and main source of food. From an Indian point of view, Europeans were not only destroying the way of life of Indian people, but destroying the natural resources of the plains to an extent that would make it impossible for anybody to live there. European Americans often saw the ghost dance as irrational. From an Indian perspective, what was being done to them in their way of life was irrational. The ghost dance was associated with one of the great American tragedies in history. On December 15, 1890, during a dispute about a ghost dance ceremony, police killed Chief Sitting Bull at Standing Rock Reservation, South Dakota. After this, a group of 300 Miniconjou Lakota men, women, and children, led by Chief Spotted Elk, also called Bigfoot, left Standing Rock Reservation to try and reach the relative safety of Pine Ridge Reservation. They were detained by the United States Army at a creek called Wounded Knee and held at gunpoint, including Gatling guns. The men were separated from the women and the children, and the soldiers confiscated weapons from the men, and something had happened. There was an altercation. So there was an account that a man who may have been deaf refused to give up his rifle. It was a deaf Indian who didn't understand what they're saying, but he didn't want to give up his gun. There's a dispute about how many people died, but it's close to 300 Indians were killed. Many of them were unarmed women and children. The larger figures given by historians include those who died of exposure and their wounds after battle, including small children whose mothers had been killed. Spotted Elk, who was unarmed and suffering from pneumonia, was shot as he lay on the ground. The Army lost 25 men. Fucking cowardice, man. Really, what that was a revenge. That was a revenge for this massacre that happened in Wyoming, where Native Americans had beat the Army's ass, wanted revenge. And so they killed women and children along with men.
What makes it so difficult is that we are convinced that these Native Americans were savages and only had bows and arrows. But many of them, like I said, were trading with other countries and other areas. They had guns. They might not have had the numbers that you believe, but like I said, they got you believing that these were just inferior people. And because they're inferior people, that somehow kind of way that justifies the treatment of them. Have you ever heard of this organization called Skull and Bones? I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a secret society. Have you heard of it? Yeah. Who's Skull and Bones is that?
Geronimo.
Either Geronimo or Sitting Bull, I can't remember.
No, it's Geronimo. Geronimo did not die in battle. Geronimo was not murdered. He died of old age, actually, in the early 1900s. But because once he died, that's when they stole his bones. Continue.
Yes, they raided his grave. But no, you got to remember when the Bush, the guy at Yale, the great-grandfather of the other Bushes that we know so well, was a teletype writer. And he was down there in Oklahoma someplace. And when this guy died, they decided, well, I think it would be a good idea to grab the bones of this ancient warrior and start the secret society. But the odd thing enough, if these people are so inferior, why would his bones hold so much power? Why would you go desecrate somebody's grave? And
because you're practicing magic.
Yes. And
dark arts magic on top of that.
Well, that was my point when they were talking about these tribes on the East Coast, that if you were over the age of 13 and you either use your real name or you use your real language, they were allowed to kill you. Why is that? That sounds pretty damn harsh for a motherfucker. It's not harsh. These motherfuckers that stole this country, that stole Turtle Island from the original indigenous people, whether Aboriginal or otherwise, that they basically were jealous and they did some crazy stuff. And we've also talked about the fact that when George Washington sent that letter to the King of Morocco, the prince at the time who was becoming the king, what was that about? It's because Morocco sued America for enslaving its people. Morocco had an outpost over here in America. These people were considered part of their nation. And even some of these ancient tribes, you find out that many Cherokee some of them were Muslim, some of them were other religions, but these people had contact. This whole idea that these invisible lines separate everybody, these lines of demarcation that don't even exist. When you look in the past and you talk about nations like Hannibal, when you talk about Hannibal and Carthage was in Africa and Asia. So you mean to tell me just because there was some water there that his country stopped? No. Just because you have brown people, everybody in America, we use the term African American, but guess what? If there was a nation here in America and a nation in Africa, and they had the same people, then that ocean doesn't matter if you were going back and forth. So many of these tribes, basically belong to other, how do we say, other countries, or we're citizens of other nations. We just didn't recognize it because, of course, we're saying they're inferior. They're not. And the fact that they were more in touch with nature and these power meridians that you were talking about and that kind of stuff. Um, Prime example, like I said, we had started talking about this on another podcast. This guy was breaking it down where there's actually 13 months and 28 days, and this is more in tune. Like you see in Ethiopia, it's a different year and century down there because their calendar is different. But those people who use that different calendar are much more in tune with the world and the actual seasons and how they affect people and power. And that's why some of these countries are so old and have these old societies that weren't able to be dominated. Or if, like with Ethiopia, it got dominated once or twice, but then they end up kicking the Italians out. Pardon me. So yeah, pay attention that
Ethiopia was never colonized.
I know that, but hold it. Italy tried to take it, and Italy
Mussolini
occupied it.
tried to take it.
Yes, he occupied
stole.
it for
Listen, he came in there and he stole some artifacts, and he took them to Italy, and they
got his ass
back.
kicked.
Yeah.
He got his ass kicked.
What happened? This is what happened. They couldn't deal with the mountainous regions. They were getting ambushed the same way the Alexander the Great got ambushed, the same way the Russians got ambushed, the same way the Americans got ambushed in Afghanistan.
They used the terrain to their advantage.
They used the terrain to their advantage, and they had a little miniature Afghanistan situation going on in Ethiopia.
No, but the bottom line, they were in tune with nature. They were in tune with their home.
And the invaders lost.
And they had superior weapons. But don't forget, Menelik II, who was king at the time, bought weapons. And then at some point, white folks stopped selling to him because they realized what he was doing. No matter. What I'm saying is that when you use the right calendar, when you use these right things, you are much more in tune with the natural way of the world and how things work. And you progress differently. You age differently. You eat differently. Because you recognize the power, or whoever in the past taught you this. So, yeah. If you're telling me that using my own language is a threat to you, then there's something going on there. You're afraid of my success. That's all this is. Sorry about that. Go ahead, my brother.
The ghost dance utilizes vortex energy patterns. The energy is generated by the collective life force spirit energy of the people participating in the ghost dance. Standing columnar waves, they travel in vortex patterns. So, like I was saying earlier about water that goes down the drain in the sink, or water going down the toilet, depending on the directions, depending on the directional orientation the dancers will be in, it will draw energy up or bring the energy down. So clockwise movements, that is high pressure energy and brings the energy upward. Counterclockwise movements are low pressure and pushes energy down. So the Native American medicine wheels they would plant on the ground or build on the ground are clockwise vortexes, bringing energy up from the center of the earth. Now, all this talk about clockwise and counterclockwise, I am very, very familiar with this. I've been practicing a form of Chinese alchemy for a long time now. And there are movements within this meditation practice that are clockwise and then counterclockwise. Now, the movement of clockwise in this system of meditation is masculine, so that when men finish their meditation, they will spiral a energy blast from your torso 36 times out clockwise and then 24 back inside your body counterclockwise. Now, if it's a woman doing it, it's the reverse. A woman would do counterclockwise and then clockwise. This is based on your gender makeup, right? And so you do it this way to be correctly attuned with the energies inside your body, the vortexes inside your body, to be attuned with the frequency of all of those, to attune the cells inside your body. Now, Duct Tape just said something profound. He said that these people were eating a certain way, breathing and living a certain way, and because of that, they aged differently. The food they ate was different. The way they think is different. Now let's apply this to modern living. We all hear the term that black don't crack, but we see some black people who look like they're really going through some shit, and you can see the wear and tear on their face. You can see So the point I'm getting at is when you align yourself with the modern world, when you align yourself with shitty fast food, when you align yourself with 5G, wireless technology, wireless headphones, wireless keyboards, wireless this, wireless that, you got all this wireless stuff all around you, and you're swimming in this. The frequency that your cells vibrate, that make up the tissue, that make up your face, that make up your skin, that make up your sexual organs, that make up your heart, your lung, and your liver. All of these cells are vibrating at this 60 hertz cycle, artificial frequency. And it starts to age you, and it causes cancer, and it causes tumors, and it causes all types of problems. Go back in your memory when you were a child, or even recently, when the power would go out. That quiet hush that you feel, that you're experiencing, that your body's experiencing, that is the frequency of the earth. That is the frequency of your body without the pressure of electronic EMF energy on you all the time. Imagine that for a second, how good that feels when that power goes off. I like it. When the power, I would always notice this as a kid. Did you ever notice that shit? Like how different it felt when the power went out?
You felt like you were roughing it. You felt like a real person.
You felt like you were in the woods, but you were still in your house.
like I'm camping inside my own crib, my nigga. But like I said, even when you're walking around the house with candles, and back then we used candles, we weren't afraid of burning the house down. You felt connected to the past or something. You felt like I could have survived back then. I know that sounds corny, I know, but I was 8, 9 years old. I didn't know any better. But all those stories or books you read about those guys that would rough it, that would like leave the city and go to Alaska and live, or go to that's how you felt. You felt like you were on their levels. I know it wasn't true, but that's how you felt. You felt connected more.
Mm-hmm. So I'll bring all this up because this invisible world with vortex energy is around us all the time. The problem is we take so much of it for granted, and they tell us every day. They tell us when they talk about the weather forecast. They talk about high pressure systems. And every now and then you get the word vortex thrown in there. Well, high pressure, these clockwise systems are cranking up air up into the atmosphere. Now, the life force that we breathe in comes from the ionosphere, the ions. We bring those down into our body. They build churches with these steeples, these points that goes up into the pointing up, attempting to draw down this heavenly energy into this house of worship. But you do this all the time, subconsciously. You can do it consciously when you meditate, but you do it when you pray. You see, you do this. You're calling on a higher power. That higher power comes from the ionosphere. It charges you up. It charges your energy up. Now, when you couple that with Christ consciousness, oh, buddy, now you've got something that is transcendental, that goes through space and time into the spirit realm and gives a high five to the Most High. So, what I'm talking about is that tornadoes are vortex energy systems. There's energy spinning that is not just, it's the wind it just started spinning in it. No. The tornado did not just start spinning like that. What happened is one of those vortexes fell down on its side. And that's how you get these shear winds. That's how you got these winds that like ran through Iowa like 2 years ago and was tearing shit up, but they said there wasn't a tornado. That was a vortex that got knocked over.
Well, they call those straight line winds, but I remember when we were kids, we learned, what caused the wind was the uneven heating of the Earth's crust. That it'd be hot over here.
Okay.
Cold over here.
Now we're getting something. You just said something though. It came from the Earth's crust, which means there's an engine at the Earth's core.
It's real simple that when you got hot and cold put together, you're going to create wind. You even see it when they used to do little experiments with ice and stuff like that, and you would do a little smoke and it would hit here, but there's a
Okay,
low pressure sensor.
but look beyond the physical.
Oh yeah, no, no,
That's
no.
the
I'm
yin
saying
and yang
manifest like
energies coming
yes,
together.
yes.
Okay.
I was simply saying that's how it manifests, but
Yes.
yes,
Now,
yeah.
but dig this though. So then, if there's turbulent times on the planet, and there's floods and there's upheavals and stuff, wise people built things in sacred sites at intersections of ley lines that would harness this and basically create these vortexes going up into the ionosphere out into space. These became these ancient monoliths. This became the Great Pyramids. This became Machu Picchu and Teotihuacan. It became Stonehenge. It became all these different things that were built to create this energy blanket around the planet to harmonize the Earth's wobble and eliminate this extreme wobble that was happening. And so then what you do is you create these structures that create these standing waves, columns that send this energy out from the Earth's core to help, like I said earlier, take a hand and turn that steam valve and let some of that steam out. So then what these ancient sites are doing are helping to balance the Earth and helping it rotate more smoothly. So what you have going on here are custodians that are going down to the boiler room and they're saying, okay, we got to make some adjustments so the boiler doesn't explode and we lose all the heat in the building and we freeze in the winter. First time I went to a boiler room was for a fire drill in elementary school.
Fondell.
Yep. And I didn't even know what a boiler room. We went down there. I was like, this place has a basement? And we went down there. This kid who always got nosebleeds got a nosebleed. He's dead now. Rest in peace, Dennis. And I was like, oh, this is a boiler room. What is a boiler room? And I saw what the boiler room is, right? And I saw who operates the boiler room. I'm like, oh, this is a whole thing down here. There's a whole separate subterranean level to this place I'm in every day, and I was completely unaware of. Right? So then that was an analogy for the earth. And that Mr. Campbell, the custodian,
Yeah, I remember him.
were these shamans. That's a horrible comparison to compare him to a shaman. But
Not really, because we didn't realize they were engineers. We didn't realize. We just thought the custodian cleaned up vomit. You know what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
No, these guys literally worked that boiler.
Yeah, he was a boiler maker. He probably went to Purdue or some shit like that.
Yeah, no, facts.
So, but the whole thing is that to operate a boiler at an elementary school in the Midwest, you can't be just anybody. Because, you got to keep everything running, basically. You got to have some basic knowledge to keep, at least back in the day you did.
Well,
now it's probably a little bit different.
My cousin's husband does it. You are an engineer. It's like 2 or 3 certifications they have to get to work for the school system up here to run that.
But check it out. So I'm bringing this analogy up because these sacred sites, they're built for different things. So people, have been indoctrinated to think that, oh, well, the Great Pyramid is just a tomb. What a dumbass way of looking at something that's so incredibly powerful. Because if you swallow that hook, line, and sinker, then you are truly in the sunken place and you are thinking the way they want you to think. Because you need to understand that those are machines. Those 3 pyramids, one is sonic, one is etheric, and the other is mechanical. And all 3 of them work together to stabilize the Earth's wobble. The Earth does have a wobble, but it was more extreme before they were built, and it's probably why some of the floods happened and Atlantis sank. Of course, in correlation with the fallen angels and all that stuff that was going on. But building those pyramids and why it was allowed to happen, quote unquote, is because it harmonized, stabilized the Earth's wobble, and then thus harmonizing and stabilizing the Earth's rotation. So All of this sounds like pie in the sky shit, but you have to put your thinking caps on, boys and girls, and you have to understand that you're manipulating an invisible realm, not a spiritual realm, energy. Before you get to spirit, in between there's that yellow line that separates the two sides of the highway on the 2-lane highway. That yellow line is the energy realm. It's just pure energy in there. There's no beings in there. On the other side of that is the spiritual realm, which is fed from that yellow line, that energy, right? That tries to get through. Sometimes they don't want to stay in their lane and they cross over and they veer into oncoming traffic. It's like you driving down some back road and it's dark at night and ain't no street lights, driving straight, and you see somebody start to veer over your side of your road. Like, oh, this motherfucker's drunk. No, that's a fucking entity. That's an entity that spilled over into the physical realm and wants to come over here and party. Fuck off, kick rocks. So this world that we live in is under control. It's under control by people who want supreme power, who practice the dark arts, who will use these ancient ways, including a ghost dance, to keep what they have under complete control. The Knights Templar borrowed some of this and have used this practice many times before. There is a prayer called the Holy Grail Prayer. The Holy Grail Prayer involves a cup, which is feminine, the vagina, and the sword, which is masculine, the penis. And these two together are yin and yang energies.
I think what people don't realize that I don't know which Masons are good or bad, but these bad Masons that want to control us are actually doing the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. They give you rules that will actually to your detriment. Like I said, having the wrong calendar, or they're actually messing up your energies. They're creating dis-ease. You know what I'm saying? The word disease means dis-ease. It is not just a sickness. Is a sickness due to the fact that your body's not in its natural state. So literally, they're giving you rules to your detriment. They're giving you rules like you only can drink on Thursdays, or they're doing things that mess up the natural balance of these energies, and you don't realize it because we're indoctrinated. We're taught so early. When you find out, like this whole education system set up by Rockefeller and Henry Ford was not about making smart Americans, it's about making good workers. So sometimes we learn things and we recite them, not realizing that we're saying something stupid. Is that what I need to say? Am I saying it right? Hey, the earth is this, and this person came here on this day. Like the whole slavery thing. If we were already over here, then that whatever trip that brought few of us over is inconsequential.
Listen. If there were, go back into that time of Confederate and Union War, the Civil War, and then imagine if Union soldiers, not Confederate, if Union soldiers came upon a group of black people in the woods that were dancing in a circle and making movements that were causing a huge vortex of energy to appear, they would kill them, because the Mason officer amongst them would be like, oh, they're practicing some esoteric shit. These motherfuckers gotta go. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would not be allowed because that is outside of the status quo. I watched this movie, Emancipation, this Will Smith movie. There's a scene where Will Smith goes and he speaks with a Union general, right? Because they offer him a job as a soldier in the Civil War. And when he first gets to the camp, he's like, okay. Will Smith is like, all right, I'm going to take off now. I'm free. He's like, yeah, you're free, but you're still property of the United States because you were captured under the Articles of War. And I'm like, what? Like, nah, dog, I'm free. I ain't no fucking slave no more. He's like, listen, you can stay in this camp or you can be a soldier. And I'm like, that's some bullshit. So you're basically telling him like he just can't leave and just go off into the world and be free. Oh, okay. I see what's going on. So you basically don't recognize the Emancipation Proclamation.
Well, you got to remember, it's only in the South anyway. Remember how that look. The people that
but they were in the South though.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said like so. All he had to do was stay in the South. He would have been fine. Look, one of the problems with America is we believe we're free and we don't recognize when we're not free. We don't recognize when people put obstacles in our way because our arrogance kicks in. And when you try to tell people like, "Hey, man, they're fucking with your freedom," they can't do that. How do you know? You don't you didn't even they don't even have a civics class in school anymore, which we've talked about in past podcasts. Is that when you remove the civics class, when you remove what teaches you how this country, or company, whatever you want to call it, works, then you don't know the rules of engagement. You don't know how to protect yourself. And you also, which this indoctrination of this education system, you don't know how the natural world works. So you can't tell. You actually believe that GMOs are a good idea. You actually believe that this technology is here for your benefit. You actually believe the wrong shit. So it's complicated, but it's really not. You need to get back to nature. Why is somebody living off the grid such a threat to the government? It's a threat because I don't need your help. And then my opinion or how I vote or how I think will be different because I'm going to tell you, like, all right, go fuck yourself. I don't need this. Or, no, I don't need your government cheese. That kind of stuff. Literally, why would you give somebody free cheese? Why would you have a government subsidies for sugar? Sugar is the most addictive substance in the world, and they spray it on all our food. And this is one of the things we kind of brushed over last time is that back in like 92-ish, 91-ish, there was a movie on HBO, so go watch it. So you know what I'm talking about. It was called Barbarians at the Gate. Do you remember it, Roscoe?
No.
Barbarians at the Gate was when RJL Tobacco bought Nabisco for like $3 billion back then. Now, why were they doing that? Because cigarette sales were going down. And in spraying these cigarettes with extra nicotine, it was working. But then you got people realizing that cigarettes were unhealthy. So what did they do? We need to get into different business. We need to diversify. So they bought a big ass food company. So what have they done with those foods since then? Some of these foods are more chemical than food, number one. Number two, they spray everything with sugar. Whenever you look at the back of these things, they got sucrose, dextrose. All those croses are sugar. Why is that? Because sugar is addictive. So same thing with Kraft. All these food companies are now owned by big tobacco companies. And what they did was they did the same thing they did to cigarettes. They added a shitload of nicotine to make you addicted. Well, now they're adding a shitload of sugar to make you addicted to snack foods. When you look at that list of how many foods are banned in other countries and shit like that, the point I'm trying to make is that they sit here and did a switch on you. They did a bait and switch. They told you you're getting healthy granola, but that granola got a lot of extra shit in there that's not even granola. It's barely food. And that's how they get you. And now you're hooked on that shit.
Dude,
now you're
for example, what they did is these large companies, these cereal companies, saw that there was money in the healthy lifestyle in the 90s. This whole foods lifestyle. And so then what they did is they're like, cool, you can go and you can buy these granola bars that you were buying from Whole Foods or from some health food store at like 10 times the price, but we can sell it to you for much cheaper, but we're going to put corn syrup in it. And we're going to put cornmeal in it. And we're going to put all this other shit. We're going to keep using these commodities that we've had for centuries. And we're going to find a way to keep putting them into these foods that we're basically going to cross over to this new customer base and find a way to sell them our shit that looks like the shit they like. So then you go to the grocery store and you go to the inside aisles, which I tell you to stay away from. And you go to the inside aisles and you go to get yourself some granola bars because you want to be healthy. Or, I'm going to get me a Go Lean bar or a Cliff bar or some shit like that, right? And then you go and you look and you read the ingredients. Corn syrup. Can't get away from that bullshit. Damn. It has corn syrup in it because it is made by General Mills. Or is made by, Post Cereal or whoever makes this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, these same companies, ConAgra, these same people that have been putting this GMO glyphosate-induced saturated food into the frozen food markets are also making granola bars now. That's why the more you can stay away from the inside aisles in the grocery store, the better. But Vortex Energy. getting back to Earth alchemy. This is some heavy duty stuff because I see things in the sky all the time. And when you get in airplanes and you fly and you get above clouds and you get to 40,000 feet and you're looking down, you see the world from a different perspective. You see the world from a perspective of, oh, this is kind of like a science experiment / sandbox. And you see the weather and the weather patterns, and you see these clouds that go on for miles and miles and miles. I'm like, how is a cloud that damn big? Like, what is that? Like, then you start to, like, read things about how, oh, the Air Force said by 2025 they will have complete control over the weather. Well, that's 2 years from now. And this was back in the 90s they were saying this shit. That was a bold ass statement back then. Even bolder now that we're 2 years away from that. And so then you get to understand that what they did is they took the ghost dance that the Native Americans were using, and they took the Knights Templar Holy Grail prayer, and they used it for weather control. They are cloud seeding and cloud shaping. See, cloud seeding is one thing, but cloud shaping, man, that is some weather dominator type shit. That's when you can take these vortexes that create tornadoes, and if you bundle them together, then you get a weather system. So you hear that term every now and then, a weather system. What is that? That sounds like a word salad some dude at the Weather Channel put together. No, a weather system is a combination of energies and temperatures that builds, and it spits out storms and blizzards and typhoons and hurricanes and tornadoes, depending on what the temperature is and the time of year. It used to be there would only be tornadoes in the springtime and the summertime. Dude, there's tornadoes in the wintertime in fucking Tennessee. It's crazy. Have you ever heard of a tornado in the Midwest in the wintertime, dude?
They told us when we were kids that tornadoes can happen anytime, but I remember when we were August, I remember like hailstorms like in like June or like maybe the end of May, you know what I'm saying? Like one time I remember we got out of school, we had to go, like you said, we had to go downstairs, but then when it kind of subsided, they let us go early so we can go home. Like we basically walked home in a tornado. But yeah, that's the 80s for you. But yeah, we just knew that late spring, early summer was the tornado season. And now, like I said, we learned in science class that you can go that it can happen anytime, but I never saw that. I never saw that at all.
Yeah. Well, it happens here, man. The tornadoes you'll see in November, you know what I mean? October, November, and sometimes December. And it's normally like, I've noticed that it's not so much down here, but it's north of here where it's a little cooler, but not as far north as you are. And it'll be in Oklahoma. It'll be in Tennessee. It'll be in North Texas, right in that thin latitude strip right there of about maybe 39 degrees, like right around there.
Look, I know it's off subject, but I just remember when the movie Twister came out or whatever, and they were talking about how bad Tornado Alley was. It goes all the way from, I guess, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and goes down kind of like, almost like the Missouri, goes down to Oklahoma. That's they call Tornado Alley. And so I'm in Oklahoma going to school. They're like, man, we got more tornadoes than anybody else. I'm like, man, I grew up in Nebraska. We had tornadoes. We had tornadoes yearly. Like we had 2 or 3 yearly. Like literally.
Yeah, we get way more tornadoes than they do.
Well, hold it. According to the numbers, look, I don't know the whole state, but I'm saying when I lived in Oklahoma City, I was in a suburb, and I went back and forth through Guthrie, Langston, all that area. Man, I swear, I remember them having 1 or 2 tornadoes. Like I never had to rush home. I remember when I don't know if I was in high school or what. I might have been in college, but I was in high school because I think Jurassic Park or one of those movies came out, and we went to go see it. Like I was with a group of people. We went to go see it, And you're here. We thought that all the booms and stuff we heard were from the T-Rex. It were from the tornado happened outside. And so I go home and I'm laughing because I see all these trees down, and then I drive right past my house. You know why? Because the trees were down in front of my house. I couldn't even see my own house. So I remember having to deal with tornadoes, having to maneuver around them. Straight line winds that, they had these straight line winds that were like 120 miles an hour, but it didn't have the swirl to it. So, well, the reason we didn't know, we didn't notify you because, their Doppler radar sees a swirl. So when you have these straight line winds, 112 miles an hour, the tornado, the system doesn't go off. Literally, back then the system didn't go off. Now, straight line winds happen. They tell you like, hey man, straight line winds, blah blah blah. Stay your ass inside. But yeah, man, it was just crazy how these people we had more turn. I'm like, yeah. It's like Oklahoma is a dick riding motherfucker. Whatever somebody else is famous for. Like I'm down there, we have Sasquatch. God damn it, how come you ain't got no goddamn Sasquatch here? Well, they might, but who knows? All I'm saying is whatever somebody else is famous for, Oklahoma is big on. We got that too.
Jumping on the bandwagon. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
So the part that people got to remember though is that these are invisible energy manifestations that can be manipulated. Now, there are stories about these groups of people that would get together in tornado season and they would ghost dance or they would do these prayers and it would break up the tornadoes. There's this culture based around orgone energy. And orgone energy is the life force energy of the world and of humanity. But orgone technology is about creating these small little devices, and they don't have like electronic switches in them. And they're just what they have is they have minerals and materials in them, and some of them have wool, and some have cotton, and some have lead, and some have aluminum, and some have magnetite, and some of them come in the shape of little small pyramids. And you can put these down on the ground in an area that has chemtrails, and it's what they call a cloud buster. It will create a hole in the cloud right there, and you'll see blue sky. And if you put a bunch of these cloud busters or tower busters around, chemtrails can't form there, right? Chemtrails can't form there because it's going straight up to the ionosphere, right? It's dope. And then also, you can put them up in an area that has a bunch of 5G towers, and it will create a standing wave wall that keeps 5G signals away from you. Yeah. So you can put them around your house. You can put them near 5G towers. You even have a little small amulet you can wear around your neck. Or you can just do the meditations that protect you from this stuff. But what these things do, it deflects this low-grade electric energy that is harmful to the cells of the human body and all living things, so that you create a barrier of protection, and you're just not a victim anymore. Because it's so easy to be a victim of things you can't see or hear or smell or taste, because you're so physical in your daily existence. You don't know how to shift gears. You don't know how to switch between the physical and the energetic or the etheric and see what's coming at you on the ether realm. And so that's why it's important to get things like, orgone devices or cloud busters or tower busters, these things that can help you. These things you can place around your house to protect you and turn off your Wi-Fi router while you're sleeping, so you can get back to, as Duct Tape said, this state where you're eating different, you're thinking and you're talking different. You're not it's good to be out of sync with modern life for a couple hours a day, at least while you're sleeping. Yeah, it's great to be out of sync with all that bullshit for at least 7 hours a night, 6 hours a night, 8 hours a night. Be out of sync with all that shit. Be in sync with your spirit and go into the dream realm, into dream time, as the Aborigines say. But you have to be vigilant to do these things. You have to want to do these things. Because to have knowledge of this and not do anything about it, then you are going to suffer. You deserve to suffer because you were told about this. And see, but that's what they do. They tell you everything that they're going to do.
But the other thing is
to avoid karmic repercussions.
No, but you've seen the shows. You read the stuff. How many people, when they get a new house, they do a smudging or a blessing? You know, you think it's witchcraft. It's not. Even a smudging kills like 2,300 different bacteria, different diseases. So that's just on the physical realm.
So imagine you do that. I'm so glad you brought this up. So I recommend that if you are moving into a house and you go in before everybody, the family comes in there. You do a prayer, you do a smudging, you burn some sage, and then go to the four corners of the house and you put down small little orgone pyramids that can fit in the size of your palm. You put them in the four corners of the house. You're then creating an energy barrier around that home to keep out negative energy, spiritual, energetic, electronic. You're keeping it all out. Because that is a sanctuary of love and happiness and tranquility. That is what we all seek to have, right? That's what we all work so fucking hard for, even though because they package it to us and like, you can get this vacation. You can go visit this pristine wilderness location. You can go to this beach. You know, you don't have to look at the locals and their poverty, you know. But you can have that in your home. But you have to make the effort to do it, though, because we're telling you about this invisible world or these invisible worlds. We're telling you about how these energy systems are involved in creating artificial weather, into keeping the sky covered so they can do things like launch rockets into space without you seeing it because it's cloud cover. All these things are being done to control and further a narrative. But you must understand the ancient ways. You must participate in the ancient ways so that you can have a wholesome and healthy life for as long as you are here, so that that life is one of quality, right? Be a man of quality, a woman of quality. I'm not talking about just having nice shit. I'm talking about how you act and behave, how you think and you feel. All these things play into your existence. All these things feed into the story of your life that is stored in the Akashic record. If we were to go after you die into the Akashic record, are we going to see just some motherfucker that ate fast foods and was all like a pleasure eater and cared about themselves? What are we going to see? What's the story? Because the alchemy of your body becomes the alchemy of your relationships and is rooted in earth alchemy. So how do we synchronize all those together so that you then have a more wholesome existence? That is what we're working for. That is what we want. And so that's why we come to you with these things like, yo, there's more to the pyramids than you realize. There's more to the Native American spiritual practices than you realize. But it's not told to us in the way that we can see it clearly, because it's shrouded in the wise old Indian. And this is what the narrative we will allow to be, so that you will understand them as this primitive savage. Instead of, these motherfuckers were basically doing some Mum-Ra the ever-living type shit, but on a positive level.
Yep. No, for real.
With some dope earth energy, earth pyramid type of technology.
Look, me and you have been saying this for years, and my best friend Dede passed. Said we were like, look, they disguise truth with fiction and fiction with truth. Like you literally think because some of these concepts we saw in cartoons is a cartoon, it's not real. But then this other shit that we see, we're hearing about different theories and different, and Evolution. Look, some of that's bullshit.
But okay,
Nigga.
but you'll watch Storm on the X-Men, and you're like, oh, that's a cool ass power. These Indians were all Storm.
We're doing that
They
shit.
were a group of Storm dancing in a circle and chanting these words over and over to control the air, the wind,
We talked
the
about this in the
weather.
last podcast that there are Native Americans that were part of California that were tree pushers. I guess they had them in Louisiana also, but they're called tree pushers. They literally can move a tree by touching it, move the entire forest. And if you look at some of the, where these forests are laid up, these old wood forests, if they did that, that's some dope shit. Like literally,
Right, but then you watch it in Lord of the Rings and be like, oh well, the Ents, the tree, the tree farmers, like, oh, that's just Lord of the Rings thing. Where'd that idea come from?
Look it up. They had tree pushers. This is not bullshit. What it is the fact that your understanding of the physical world has been warped by your indoctrination into this society. And when they indoctrinate you, like you're so quick when you're a little kid and you raise your hand, you want to give the answer. It was like social media early on. You want likes. You want the teacher to say you're doing a good job, not realizing that what you're reciting is complete and utter bullshit. So if you're rewarded for the bullshit that you'll fuck around and may not look, how come you got in trouble for daydreaming? How come I got in trouble for having ADD? Excuse me, because quite simply, I would zone out because it was bullshit. So my spirit knew it was bullshit, but now I'm on medication. I'm literally being diagnosed. That's another thing that I've talked about on past podcasts. If you have a child and they have something, do not share the diagnosis with your child. Do not do that. This not in this society where people are looking for excuses to fail. What you do is you don't tell your child about their diagnosis. You work with them, and then when they run into that wall, you help them cope through it. You help them maintain. You teach them how to deal with it. Because if you give them a diagnosis, you're giving them a key to being fucked up.
Hell, don't even show them a medicine. Put it in their food.
Yeah. Look, how many times have you heard Dr. Umar talked about this shit, but you hear other psychiatrists say that when this kid was diagnosed with being retarded or slow or whatever, then he behaved or she behaved that way. Then they get to college and they get reassessed and come to find out they never had it. There's something was going on in their life that affected them in such a way they couldn't focus. And now you were misdiagnosed or overdiagnosed. So literally, like I said, this is why it's so important to be in tune with the natural world, because then you're also in tune with your body. You might recognize the shit. Your body will ask for shit or crave certain things. That's because you're missing it. Look, I tell women all the time, like, some of these women don't realize that they're divine. Like, look, you got all these damn dandelions in the yard, and she was complaining about it. And I told the chick, I said, doesn't your son have asthma? She's like, yeah. I said, that's the cure for asthma. You manifested that shit on your own. You're too busy trying to make your yard look like everybody else's yard, not realizing that you manifested the cure to your son's ailment, and your goofy ass is spraying Roundup on the motherfucker when you need to be plucking him up, making a tea, and fixing your son. Sorry about that. I go off sometimes. I didn't mean to. But my point being is, when you're in tune with the world, you recognize what's out there, and you know what its benefits are, how to use it properly. But that's not what they teach you in school. They teach you that a pill will take care of everything.
Dude,
man, fuck they side effects, my nigga.
When I would go fishing with my dad as a kid, I could appreciate the stillness. I could appreciate, like, the fact that this was not cartoons and video games, and this wasn't concrete and skyscrapers. This was different. This was getting back to the raw. Now, of course, I would wander off sometimes and go do my own thing, but I appreciated the stillness of fishing. I understood that, like, fishing was a way for him to take the edge off, for him to decompress, but for me to explore. Right? And so now, as a grown-ass man, I can appreciate both. I can appreciate, I'll go fishing, and I chill the fuck out. It's what it is. It's mindfulness meditation. It's doing something without thinking about it. You don't need to think about it, because it's a way of doing Tai Chi without doing Tai Chi. And it's a way of cleansing your body of city life, of EMF waves and 5G signals. Next time you go fishing, leave your phone in the car. Take a watch so you can know what time it is, or something like that. But leave your phone in the car. Like, listen, whatever it is going to be fine, because you have to give yourself at least an hour away from everybody so you can reset, so you can cleanse yourself, so you can appreciate some of this earth alchemy. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.